Have you ever had one of those quiet moments where everything around you seems fine, but something inside you feels off? You're not in crisis. Nothing is necessarily wrong. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Maybe you're studying, working, scrolling, laughing at things that used to make you feel something. From the outside, your life looks normal, maybe even good. But then, out of nowhere, a question slips in. And why does this all feel so empty? It's not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It just lingers in the background like a low, constant noise you can't quite turn off. You start to notice it more at night, when everything slows down, when distractions fade, when there's nothing left to do but sit with your own thoughts. And in those moments, the silence feels heavier than it should. You think about your goals, and they don't excite you the way they used to. You think about your routine, and it starts to feel like you're just repeating the same day over and over again. You think about the future, and instead of feeling hopeful, you feel unsure, almost disconnected. And the scariest part, you don't even know why, because nothing is clearly broken. There's no obvious reason to feel this way. And so you start questioning yourself. Am I just ungrateful? Is something wrong with me? Why can't I just be happy like everyone else seems to be? But here's the truth most people don't talk about. This feeling, this quiet sense of meaninglessness, it's more common than you think. And it doesn't mean your life is falling apart. Sometimes it means you've been chasing things that were never meant to fulfill you in the first place. Sometimes it means you've been saying yes to everything, except the things that actually matter to you. And sometimes it means you've been caring too much about the wrong things for far too long. So before you try to escape this feeling, before you try to distract yourself again, maybe it's time to sit with it, to understand it. Because what if this emptiness isn't the problem, but the beginning of something real? So, why does life feel meaningless sometimes? To understand that, you have to accept something most people avoid. Life doesn't automatically come with meaning. There's no built-in purpose waiting for you to discover one day like a hidden treasure. No moment where everything suddenly clicks and you finally feel complete forever. That idea is comforting, but it's also a lie. And the more you chase that perfect feeling, the perfect life, the perfect version of yourself, the more disconnected you start to feel, because you're chasing something that was never meant to exist. Think about how you live your life right now. You wake up, you check your phone, you go through your routine, you try to be productive, you try to be better, you try to feel happy. And if you don't, you feel like you're doing something wrong. But here's the problem. You've been taught that life is supposed to feel good all the time. That if you're not happy, motivated, inspired, then something is broken. So when that empty feeling shows up, you panic. You try to fix it. You distract yourself. You scroll more. You chase new goals. You compare your life to others. But no matter what you do, that feeling keeps coming back. Because meaning doesn't come from avoiding emptiness. It comes from facing it. Here's something most people don't realize. The feeling of meaninglessness often shows up when your life is too comfortable, but not meaningful. You're not struggling for something that matters. You're just existing, floating, doing things because you're supposed to, not because you deeply care. And when there's no real struggle, no real direction, your mind starts asking, what's the point? I- But struggle isn't the enemy. In fact, it's the source of meaning. Think about anything in your life that has ever felt truly important. A goal you worked hard for, a relationship you fought to keep, a moment where you had to push through something difficult. Those things mattered because they were hard, because they required something from you, because they weren't easy. Now compare that to the things that feel empty, endless scrolling, mindless routines, trying to impress people who don't really matter, chasing validation that disappears the moment you get it. There's no real struggle there, no depth, no reason for your mind to say, this matters. And that's where the emptiness begins. Not because your life is meaningless, but because you're investing your time and energy into things that don't deserve it. Another hard truth. You care too much about things that don't matter, and not enough about the things that do. You worry about how people see you. You overthink small mistakes. You chase approval. You try to keep everything perfect. But deep down, you're avoiding the real questions. What do you actually value? What are you willing to struggle for? What kind of pain are you willing to accept? Because every meaningful life comes with pain. You don't get to avoid it. You only get to choose it. Do you want the pain of discipline or the pain of regret? The pain of growth or the pain of staying stuck? The pain of being honest or the pain of pretending? Those are the real choices, and most people avoid them. They wait for motivation. They wait to feel ready. They wait for life to suddenly make sense. But it never does. Not on its own. Meaning is not something you find. It's something you build through what you choose to care about, through what you decide is worth your energy, through the problems you're willing to face every single day. So if life feels meaningless right now, don't run from that feeling. Listen to it, because it might be telling you something important. That you've been living on autopilot, that you've been chasing the wrong things, that you've been avoiding the discomfort that actually leads somewhere. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe that feeling is a signal, a turning point, a moment where you finally stop asking, why does life feel meaningless? And start asking, what am I willing to make meaningful? Because at the end of the day, life isn't about feeling good all the time. It's about choosing what's worth the struggle. And when you finally choose something that truly matters to you, the emptiness doesn't magically disappear, but it changes. It becomes quieter, more distant, because now you have something real to hold on to, something that gives your life weight, something that makes all of this worth it. But let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly alive? Not distracted, not entertained, not just okay, but alive. Was it when you were scrolling through your phone for hours? Was it when you were trying to keep up with everyone else's expectations? Or was it in those rare moments where something actually challenged you, pushed you, demanded something real from you? What if the reason life feels meaningless isn't because nothing matters, but because you've been avoiding the things that do? Think about it. How many times have you ignored something you knew was important? A goal you kept postponing, a conversation you were too afraid to have, a risk you didn't take because you didn't want to fail, and instead, you chose what was easy, what was safe, what was comfortable. But here's the uncomfortable question. Is comfort slowly killing your sense of meaning? Because comfort feels good at first. No pressure, no risk, no pain, but over time, it turns into boredom, then emptiness, then that quiet feeling you can't explain. Let me ask you another one. If nothing in your life changed for the next 5 years, would you be okay with that? Or does that thought make you feel uneasy? Because that feeling, that discomfort, that's not anxiety, that's awareness. It's the part of you that knows you're capable of more, the part of you that's tired of repeating the same patterns, the part of you that's asking, is this really it? And maybe the answer is no. But if it's no, then why are you still living the same way? Why are you still giving your time to things that drain you? Why are you still chasing approval from people who don't truly see you? Why are you still waiting for the right moment to start something that actually matters? Here's a harder question. Are you afraid of meaning or just afraid of what it requires? Because meaning isn't light, it's heavy. It comes with responsibility, with sacrifice, with the possibility of failure. When you choose something meaningful, you're also choosing the struggle that comes with it. And not everyone is ready for that. So instead, you stay in the middle, not completely unhappy, but not fulfilled either, just existing. But how long can you stay there before it starts to break you? Let's be honest. You don't actually want a meaningless life. You want a life that feels meaningful, without the discomfort it takes to create one. But that's not how it works. Meaning comes from commitment, from deciding, this matters to me, even when it's hard, even when I don't feel like it, even when I fail. So ask yourself this. What is something in your life right now that you know matters, but you keep avoiding? Is it your growth, your passion, your truth, your purpose? Or is it something deeper? Something you've been ignoring for so long that you almost forgot it was there. Because that's usually where meaning hides, not in what's easy, not in what's comfortable, but in what feels real. And real things are rarely simple. They're messy, uncertain, sometimes even painful, but they're also worth it. So maybe the question is, why does life feel meaningless sometimes? Uh, Maybe the real question is, what am I avoiding that could give my life meaning? And once you answer that, you don't need to change everything overnight. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to take one step, one honest step towards something that actually matters to you. Because meaning isn't found in big, dramatic moments. It's built in small, consistent choices. Every time you choose growth over comfort, every time you choose truth over approval, every time you choose something real over something easy, you're creating it. So let me leave you with this. If you continue living the way you are right now, where will it take you? And more importantly, is that a place you actually want to be? Because at some point, you have to stop asking why life feels meaningless and start deciding what you're willing to make meaningful, even if it's hard, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it scares you, especially then. Why does life feel meaningless sometimes? Full body script inspired by the subtle art of not giving a FCK asterisk. Sometimes life feels meaningless. You wake up, do the same things, talk to the same people, scroll through the same apps, and go back to sleep wondering if any of it actually matters. You look around and it seems like everyone else has a purpose. Everyone else seems driven, passionate, certain. But you feel disconnected, empty, like you're moving through life but not really living it. And maybe the scariest part is this: you don't even know why. But what if the problem is that your life has no meaning? What if the problem is that you've been taught to look for meaning in all the wrong places? Part 1. We think meaning comes from feeling good. We're taught that life should always feel exciting, happy, inspiring, and successful. That if we're doing life correctly, we should wake up every morning full of motivation. We should always know what we want. We should always be confident. But real life doesn't work like that. Some days are boring. Some days are painful. Some days make you question everything. And when those days come, we immediately assume something is wrong with us. We say, why do I feel this way? Why am I not happy? Why does everything feel pointless? I- But maybe feeling lost doesn't mean your life is meaningless. Maybe it means you're finally becoming aware that the things you've been chasing don't actually matter to you. Part 2. The pressure to matter is destroying us. We live in a world that constantly tells us we need to be extraordinary. You need to be successful. You need to be rich. You need to be admired. You need to build the perfect life before you're even sure who you are. And when you don't reach those impossible standards, you feel like a failure. But here's the truth. Most of the things we obsess over don't actually make life meaningful. Attention doesn't. Validation doesn't. Looking perfect doesn't. Being better than everyone else does. Because even if you get all of those things, there will still be a part of you asking, "And now what?" Meaning doesn't come from proving your worth. Meaning comes from deciding what is worth suffering for. Part 3. Meaning is found in what you choose to care about. Every life involves pain. Every path comes with frustration, disappointment, and sacrifice. The question is not, how do I avoid pain? The question is, what pain is worth it to me? Maybe life feels meaningless because you've been spending your energy on things you don't truly care about. You've been trying to impress people you don't even like, trying to meet expectations you never chose, trying to become someone that doesn't even feel like you. No wonder you feel empty. You cannot build a meaningful life while living someone else's definition of success. A meaningful life isn't always exciting. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's simple. It's caring deeply about a few things instead of pretending to care about everything. It's choosing people, choosing growth, choosing honesty, choosing something that matters to you even if nobody else understands it. Part 4. You don't need to have everything figured out. A lot of people believe they need to discover their purpose before they can start living. But purpose rarely arrives all at once. Usually it starts small. You try something. You fail. You learn. You care about something a little more than you did yesterday. Meaning is not something you find one day like a hidden treasure. Meaning is something you create through the way you live. You create it every time you choose what matters, every time you stop pretending, every time you let go of what doesn't matter. And maybe right now, you don't need all the answers. Maybe you just need to stop running from the questions, realizations. Feeling lost does not mean your life is meaningless. You do not need to be extraordinary to have a meaningful life. Chasing validation, attention, and perfection often creates emptiness, not purpose. A meaningful life comes from choosing what you truly care about. Pain is unavoidable, but some pain is worth carrying. You don't have to meet everyone else's expectations. It is okay to let go of goals that never felt true to you. Meaning is built slowly through small choices and honest actions. You do not need to figure out your entire life today. Sometimes the first step toward meaning is simply admitting that you've been living for the wrong things. Before you move on, sit with these questions honestly, not to judge yourself, not to pressure yourself, just to understand yourself a little better. When was the last time I genuinely felt alive? What was I doing? Who was I with? Why have I drifted away from that? Am I exhausted because life is meaningless, or because I've been trying to live a life that doesn't fit me? How much of my stress comes from what I actually want, and how much comes from trying to meet other people's expectations? If nobody could judge me, what would I stop pretending to care about? What am I chasing right now? Money, attention, approval, success. And if I finally got it, would it really make me feel whole? Have I been so focused on looking okay that I've stopped asking myself if I actually am okay? Am I surrounding myself with people who understand me, or people I constantly feel the need to impress? What part of my life feels empty right now? And what truth have I been avoiding about it? Maybe you've been staying in places that no longer feel right. Maybe you've been forcing yourself to keep going because you think stopping would make you weak. Maybe you've outgrown a version of yourself that once made sense, and that's hard. Because sometimes we don't grieve people. Sometimes we grieve old dreams, old versions of ourselves, old beliefs about who we thought we had to become. You might realize that you've spent years trying to be good enough for your family, good enough for society, good enough for people who never even took the time to understand you. But what if your life was never meant to be spent proving yourself? What if it was meant to be lived? What if the reason life feels meaningless is because you've been surviving for so long that you forgot what it feels like to truly connect with yourself? What am I afraid would happen if I slowed down? What am I distracting myself from every time I scroll, stay busy, or avoid being alone? What truth about my life have I been trying not to admit? Am I unhappy because life is unfair, or because I keep betraying what I really want? If I continue living exactly like this for the next 5 years, would I be proud of the person I become? What do I need more of right now? Rest, courage, honesty, connection, a fresh start. What do I need less of? Comparison, pressure, pretending, trying to please everyone. Maybe you don't need a completely new life. Maybe you just need to stop abandoning yourself inside the one you already have. Maybe meaning doesn't come from finally becoming someone else. Maybe it comes from finally becoming more honest about who you are. So if life feels meaningless sometimes, don't panic. Don't rush to fill the emptiness with distractions. Listen to it. Because sometimes that emptiness is not there to destroy you. Sometimes it is there to show you that the life you are living is no longer enough for the person you are becoming. And maybe that is not the end. Maybe that is where your real life finally begins. Because the truth is, most people never stop long enough to question the life they are living. They stay busy. They stay distracted. They keep moving, even when every part of them feels empty. They convince themselves that maybe things will feel different when they have more money, when they finally achieve something, when somebody finally chooses them, when life finally becomes easier. But sometimes nothing changes, because the problem was never that you didn't have enough. The problem was that you kept searching outside yourself for something only honesty could give you. You can spend years building a life that looks impressive from the outside and still feel completely disconnected inside. You can have the right grades, the right job, the right relationship, the right image, and still go to bed feeling like you are missing something. Because deep down, you know when you are living a life that is not really yours. You know when you say yes even though you want to say no. You know when you stay quiet because you are afraid people will not understand. You know when you keep shrinking yourself to make other people comfortable. And after a while, that becomes exhausting. Not because you are weak, but because pretending is exhausting. There is a certain kind of loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who only know the version of you that you perform, the version that always seems okay, the version that always has the answers, the version that never complains, never struggles, never falls apart. But maybe you are tired because you have been carrying too much alone. Maybe you are tired of pretending you are fine. Maybe you are tired of trying to be the person everyone expects you to be. And maybe, for the first time in your life, you need to let yourself admit that. You need to admit that some things are not working, that some dreams no longer fit, that some people no longer feel like home, that some versions of you need to be left behind. Because you cannot create a meaningful life while holding on to everything that is making you miserable. Sometimes growth looks like letting go of the need to be understood by everyone, letting go of the need to always be productive, letting go of the idea that your worth depends on what you achieve. You are allowed to be lost. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to disappoint people if it means finally being honest with yourself. And maybe that is one of the hardest realizations. The life you want might require becoming someone different, not more impressive, not more perfect, just more real, more honest, more present, more willing to stop chasing what everyone told you should matter and start paying attention to what actually matters to you. Because at the end of the day, meaning is not something that appears when your life becomes perfect. Meaning appears when you stop running from yourself, when you tell the truth, when you choose what matters, when you stop giving your energy to things that leave you empty. And maybe tomorrow, nothing around you will change. You will still wake up in the same room. You will still have the same problems. You will still feel uncertain. But maybe tomorrow you will be a little more honest, a little more aware, a little less afraid to ask yourself, what if the life I want begins the moment I stop pretending to want the life everyone else chose for me? A turning point. There comes a moment in life when you get tired, not physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You get tired of pretending, tired of forcing things, tired of waking up every day and acting like you are okay when deep down you know you are not, and maybe nobody notices. Because from the outside, your life still looks normal. You still smile. You still reply. You still do what you are supposed to do. But inside, something has changed. You cannot keep living the same way anymore. That is the turning point. Not when your life suddenly becomes better. Not when you finally have all the answers. Not when everything falls perfectly into place. The turning point begins the moment you finally admit, This is not the life I want." That truth is terrifying, because once you admit it, you cannot unknow it. You start noticing all the things you have been ignoring. The relationship that drains you, the dream you outgrew, the pressure that has been crushing you, the version of yourself that you have been performing for years. And for the first time you realize you do not have to keep being that person. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to wake up one day and decide that you want more, not more money, not more status, just more truth, more peace, more meaning, more of a life that actually feels like yours. But here is the difficult part. A turning point is rarely dramatic. It does not always look like quitting your job, moving away, or starting over overnight. Sometimes it looks small. Sometimes it is deciding to stop texting the person who keeps hurting you. Sometimes it is finally saying what you really feel. Sometimes it is admitting that you are unhappy. Sometimes it is asking for help. Sometimes it is choosing to rest instead of pretending to be strong. Small decisions can change your life, because every time you choose honesty over pretending, you become a little more free. Every time you stop betraying yourself to make other people comfortable, you become a little more alive. And maybe that is what a turning point really is. It is not one big moment. It is a series of small moments where you stop abandoning yourself. You stop saying yes when you mean no. You stop chasing people who do not choose you. You stop living only to meet expectations. You stop waiting for permission to become who you really are. And yes, it is uncomfortable, because growth is uncomfortable. Letting go is uncomfortable. Being honest is uncomfortable. But staying in a life that no longer feels right is uncomfortable too. The difference is, one kind of discomfort keeps you trapped, the other sets you free. So maybe you are not lost. Maybe you are just standing at the edge of a new version of your life. A version where you stop shrinking yourself. A version where you stop apologizing for who you are. A version where you stop settling for a life that only looks okay from the outside. You do not have to know exactly where you are going. You just have to be brave enough to admit that where you are now is no longer where you belong. And maybe that is enough. Maybe the turning point is not the moment everything changes. Maybe it is the moment you finally decide that you are worth changing for. Reflections. What part of my life no longer feels true to me? What have I been pretending not to feel? What am I holding on to that I know I need to let go of? Am I staying because I am happy or because I am afraid to change? What would happen if I finally chose myself? What is one small decision I can make today that my future self would thank me for? Maybe your life does not need a complete restart. Maybe it only needs one honest moment. One moment where you stop running. One moment where you stop pretending. One moment where you finally say, I deserve a life that feels real. Uh, The turning point. The lesson we learned too late. Inspired by the subtle art of not giving a FCK asterisk. Most people think a turning point in life is supposed to look dramatic. They imagine a huge breakthrough, a life-changing opportunity, a moment where everything suddenly becomes clear. But real turning points rarely happen like that. Most turning points happen quietly. They happen in the middle of an ordinary day, when you are sitting alone in your room, when you are driving home, when you are lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, realizing that something inside you no longer feels the same. You begin to understand that you cannot keep living the way you have been living. You are tired, not because life is hard, but because you have been spending so much of your life pretending to be okay, pretending to care about things that do not matter to you, pretending that the life you are living is enough. And that is the first lesson. The more you try to become who everyone else wants you to be, the more meaningless your own life begins to feel. For years, maybe you believed that if you just worked harder, achieved more, made people proud, looked better, or became more successful, you would finally feel fulfilled. But instead, you only became more exhausted. Because deep down, You knew you were chasing a version of life that was never really yours. You wanted approval. You wanted certainty. You wanted people to tell you that you were enough. But the lesson from life, and from this book, is that you will never feel enough if your entire life is built around trying to prove your worth, because there will always be another person to impress, another expectation to meet, another reason to feel like you are falling behind. You could spend your entire life trying to win a game that never ends. And one day you wake up and realize you have spent so much time trying to become somebody that you forgot to ask yourself who you actually are. That is the turning point. The moment you stop asking, how do I make everyone happy? And start asking, what actually matters to me? That question changes everything. Because maybe what matters to you is not the same thing that matters to everybody else. Maybe you do not want the life people keep telling you to want. Maybe you do not want to spend your whole life chasing status, money, attention, or validation. Maybe you want peace. Maybe you want freedom. Maybe you want a life that feels honest. But being honest with yourself is difficult because honesty forces you to admit things you have been avoiding. Maybe you are unhappy in the relationship. Maybe you are following a dream that no longer feels real. Maybe you are staying in places that have stopped helping you grow. Maybe you are constantly trying to be understood by people who never really see you. And maybe the hardest truth is this: some of the things you want are not making you happy because you never wanted them in the first place. You only wanted them because you thought they would make you worthy. That is one of the biggest lessons. A meaningful life is not built by having more. It is built by caring about less. Less of what other people think. Less of what impresses everyone else. Less of the pressure to be perfect. And more of what feels real. More honesty. More courage. More connection. More things that matter deeply, even if nobody else understands them. The truth is, you cannot care about everything. If you try to care about every opinion, every expectation, every failure, every comparison, every criticism, you will destroy yourself. You will become anxious, lost, disconnected. Because when everything matters, nothing really does. That is why life starts to change when you choose what deserves your energy. You stop giving your time to people who only make you feel small. You stop chasing goals that do not belong to you. You stop wasting years trying to be liked by people who do not even know the real you. And instead, you begin building a life around the things that are truly worth struggling for. That is another lesson people do not talk about. Every meaningful life comes with pain. There is no life without disappointment, no path without fear, no dream without sacrifice. The question is not whether you will suffer. The question is, what are you willing to suffer for? Because the pain of being honest is real. The pain of changing is real. The pain of letting go is real. But the pain of staying stuck in a life that no longer feels like yours is real too. The difference is that one pain helps you grow, the other keeps you trapped. Maybe you are afraid to change because you think you need to have everything figured out first. But you do not. Nobody really knows what they are doing. Most people are just afraid to admit it. You do not need a perfect plan. You do not need certainty. You do not need to know exactly who you are going to become. You only need enough courage to take one honest step. Maybe that step is admitting that you are unhappy. Maybe it is finally saying no. Maybe it is leaving. Maybe it is asking for help. Maybe it is forgiving yourself. Because sometimes the turning point in your life begins with something very small. A conversation, a decision, a truth you can no longer ignore. And little by little, your life changes. Not because everything suddenly becomes easier, but because you stop fighting yourself. You stop trying to become who the world told you to be, and you begin becoming who you actually are. That is the lesson. Your life will not feel meaningful until the life you are living finally belongs to you. Final reflection. Ask yourself honestly, what am I giving too much importance to? What expectations am I carrying that were never truly mine? What part of my life feels heavy because I am pretending? What would change if I stopped trying to impress everyone? What am I truly willing to struggle for? What is one thing I need to let go of to finally feel free? Maybe your turning point is not somewhere far away. Maybe it is here. Maybe it is now. Maybe it begins the moment you stop asking for permission to live your own life. Do you think you related too much to this topic? Do you think you related too much to this topic? The kind where, while listening to this, it felt like someone was describing your life. Like some parts were difficult to hear because they were true. And maybe you have tried to ignore it. Maybe you kept telling yourself, I'm fine. It's not a big deal. I'll get over it. Maybe you thought that if you stayed busy enough, distracted enough, or strong enough, the heaviness would eventually disappear. But it didn't. That exhaustion is still there. That emptiness is still there. That feeling that something is wrong, even if you cannot explain exactly what it is. And maybe the scariest part is not that you feel this way. Maybe the scariest part is that you have gotten used to it. You have gotten used to pretending you are okay. You have gotten used to carrying everything by yourself. You have gotten used to putting everyone else first while slowly abandoning yourself. You have gotten so used to surviving that you forgot what it feels like to actually live. But what if you are not okay? What if you related to this so deeply because you have been carrying this for a long time? Maybe you are tired, tired of the pressure, tired of trying to be enough, tired of living a life where you constantly feel like you have to prove your worth. Maybe you are tired of being the version of yourself that everyone expects, while the real you stays hidden. And if that is true, I want you to hear this. You are not weak for feeling tired. You are not dramatic for feeling hurt. You are not broken because you cannot keep pretending. Maybe this is the moment you need to become honest with yourself. Honest that there are things in your life that are no longer working. Honest that there are people, dreams, habits, or expectations you have been holding onto. Even though deep down, You know they no longer fit who you are. And maybe you related to this because part of you is ready to change. You just do not know where to begin, and that is okay. You do not need to fix your entire life overnight. You do not need to have all the answers. You only need to be honest enough to ask yourself, what is actually making me unhappy? I- What part of my life have I outgrown? What am I still holding on to, simply because I am afraid to let it go? And how much longer can I keep living a life that no longer feels like mine? Because sometimes the biggest changes begin with a simple realization. You cannot keep being the old version of yourself forever. And maybe you did not just relate to this topic. Maybe this was the wake-up call you have been needing. Full-length outro. And maybe after hearing all of this, you are sitting there quietly. Maybe you are thinking about the parts that felt too real, the parts that sounded too much like your own life, the parts you usually try not to think about, because sometimes the hardest truths are not the ones we do not know. The hardest truths are the ones we have known for a long time, but keep trying to ignore. Maybe you have been telling yourself that you are okay, that you are just tired, that things will get better once life slows down. But deep down, you know this feeling is more than that. You know what it feels like to smile in front of other people and still feel empty when you are alone. You know what it feels like to keep going, even when part of you no longer wants to. You know what it feels like to carry so much inside you that nobody else can see. And maybe you have been carrying it for so long that you forgot what it feels like to put it down. But listen to me. You do not have to keep living this way. You do not have to spend your entire life proving yourself. You do not have to keep pretending to be strong when you are falling apart. You do not have to keep choosing a life that looks right on the outside, but feels wrong on the inside. You are allowed to admit that you are unhappy. You are allowed to admit that you are lost. You are allowed to admit that you want something more, not because you are ungrateful, not because you are weak, but because there is a part of you that knows you were made for more than just surviving. Maybe the life you want does not begin when everything finally becomes perfect. Maybe it begins the moment you stop lying to yourself, the moment you stop saying yes when you want to say no, the moment you stop staying in places that no longer feel like home, the moment you stop trying to be the person everyone else wants, and finally ask yourself who you really are. And maybe that question is scary, because what if the answer changes everything? What if you realize that the life you have been living is not the life you truly want? What if you realize that you have spent years chasing things that never really mattered to you? What if you realize that you have been abandoning yourself just to keep everyone else happy? But maybe that is not something to fear. Maybe that is the beginning. Because the moment you become honest with yourself is the moment your life can finally start becoming honest too. Maybe you do not need all the answers right now. Maybe you do not need to know exactly what comes next. Maybe all you need is one honest step, one honest conversation, one honest decision, one honest moment where you stop pretending And maybe little by little, that is how you find your way back to yourself. So if this topic touched something inside you, do not ignore it. Do not rush to distract yourself. Sit with it. Listen to it. Because sometimes the feelings we try hardest to avoid are the ones trying to show us what needs to change. And maybe the reason you related to this so much is because deep down you already know. You know that you deserve a life that feels real. You know that you deserve peace. You know that you deserve to stop carrying everything alone. And no matter how lost you feel right now, it is not too late. It is not too late to change. It is not too late to let go. It is not too late to become the person you were always meant to be. If you like this topic, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Midnight Silence Audiobooks.